This is it, Berserk. We're doing this. Chapter 1, Black Swordsman arc. So, I'm 100 years early. This is Gwytherinn. Gwytherinn, you have bubble tea.
I do.
So, I guess we're going to be doing bubble tea every episode. What is the flavor?
Passion fruit oolong.
Nice.
With mango jelly and tapioca.
You're inadvertently dropping manga breadcrumbs there. Manga. Anime breadcrumbs. Okay, anyway. So,
and I mean, what was it that I'm turning you? Because you're starting to love bubble tea.
Yeah, so I'm like getting more genderqueer because she did get me bubble tea, and it was raspberry and it had little bubbles in it, and so that's an unfortunate circumstance, but I can't really fight against it. I mean, the truth is, objectively, I'm enjoying the bubble tea, so it is what it is. All right, so we're doing Berserk Chapter 1. This is what it is. Here we go. So, Gwytherinn, you have not, you're not an anime bro.
No, not in the slightest. I've tried to stay away from it as much as possible for most of my life.
Do you feel like it's toxic from a masculinity perspective, like male power fantasy?
I just have never really understood the appeal, so there's that.
Okay, well, so that's cool. So this is sort of a different era that you're getting into here of Japan comicery. So,
yeah. Like, the only thing I've remotely seen or, like, done anything with is Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I feel like that's kind of westernized or for a Western audience in a way.
Yeah, I feel like it's...
anime light.
Something about The Last Airbender bothers me. I can't put my finger on it. Like, I might just be wrong. Like, if I saw the series, I might dig it. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I hate it, but I do. Anyway.
I really enjoyed it. I loved it.
I'm sure you did. Mm-hmm. So my feeling on that is they're just pulling from Japanese content and Americanizing it a little bit. I'm sure that's a yokel thought on it. I might change my mind if I saw it. So, okay, so let's talk about it. So, you also have never read any kind of manga before, right?
No, I've only read Western comics and graphic novels.
Mm-hmm. Like, do you actually do that, like, a lot, or are you just that you have partaken in one?
I used to do it a lot more than I do now. But this did remind me, like, the first graphic novel series I ever read was The Sandman.
Like, why every time someone says that, I think about, like, the Sandman villain from Spider-Man. Like, I've never heard of the Sandman comic before.
I'm not sure. They wanted to do a reboot of the Sandman. I don't know if that's who they were talking about. And Neil Gaiman wanted to do it, and they were like, it just has to be the Sandman. You can do whatever you want with it. So maybe that is the Sandman. I don't know. There's, like, other, like, heroes.
I mean, is it a dude that's all sand?
No.
Oh, not. Okay.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. And so you love The Sandman, and it's one of your favorite all-time top 10
No, I
series.
absolutely hated it. I hated it. The only thing I remember is that it was completely grotesque. And I was going through
like gore?
There's, like, yeah, there's a significant amount of, like, gore, melting faces, like, people doing terrible things to people.
What's wrong with that? Why you don't like that?
Visuals just have a very big impact on me, and I'm pretty sensitive, I guess.
Well, this is a great series for you to teethe on, then.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I was really nervous, and I was like, I had some big, like, trepidation going on because I just remembered The Sandman was grotesque. I hated it. Mm-hmm. Is this what Berserk is going to be for me? That I'm just going to hate every moment of it. Granted, The Sandman was horror, so I guess it did its job for me. But
so, and so to be 100% kosher, you've read through the Black Swordsman arc now, but we're just talking about chapter 1 here today.
That's correct.
Okay, so...
Oh, and interesting little factoid is that The Sandman and Berserk are concurrent. they were being released at the same time.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there are some like overlaps in terms of things that are going on here. I don't know.
It's interesting.
It's just interesting.
Okay, yeah. So I like this. You did some study. You did more study than I did and took more notes. So that's good. You can pick up my slack, I guess. So
I mean, it's okay. You're busy with your Discord.
I'm not. Yeah, yeah. We're busy. We're busy. I'm so busy.
You're busy.
It's very, it's very crowded. All right. So we have a couple metrics. I guess we're gonna hit for these chapters. Standout scenes, MVP, moral questions, art, and then sort of like a loose chapter rating system. So we'll see how that goes. Might change it up. It depends. And then also lore, like just maybe talking a little bit about lore dumps and stuff like that. So let's tell me your initial impressions. Let's talk about it. Like, I mean, obviously page 1 is
full on
erotic.
right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was pretty eager to get started, and the first night I picked it up, I opened it to page 1, and I was like, wow. Right away.
Good stuff.
Right away, pulling no punches. So,
Yeah. So were you eroticized? Did this turn you on?
I was highly disturbed.
Okay. Cool.
I was really unsettled, and I just had to put it down. And it kind of bothered me for the rest of the night. Like,
and I was like, I told you, you're gonna still have to read this.
yeah, and I wasn't gonna punk out or anything. Like, that's cool. Yeah, I had committed, and I planned to regardless. But, I don't know why it bothered me so much. It kind of called to mind, like, there's this movie in 1995 called Species, and I'll never forget the trailer because it horrified me so much. Like this,
it's like an Aliens type?
Yeah, kind of, but the alien is like this hot woman, and...
it's already starting good.
and she's like hunting men, and the trailer shows her kissing a man, and her tongue goes like straight through his head, and I've never ever forgotten that.
That's real love. So do you think like do you think that was that, I wonder if that was like when that was made in relation to Berserk,
1995.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I was pretty disturbed, and like that's kind of what this brought up, and like there's just a level of vulnerability there that I had to take a moment.
And that's page 1.
Page 1 and 2.
So it's trying to scare you away, basically. Right? So the art in those opening pages of the chapters is always like a little bit more charcoal. Like there's a lot of the gradient and contrast is usually a little bit more than the more like comic rest of it. So so then he walks off, right? And so some characters get introduced here, right? Like what do you think about the bar scene?
This was very slow going at first for me because I didn't really... You had showed me how to read it, but I had to keep like rereading to get the frames right.
Yeah, like getting your focus aimed. I mean, I still like... You'll accidentally spoil yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just didn't understand what was happening in a frame, so I would like sit on it for a little bit and just try to figure out what was going on. But the bar scene, for me... Besides the arrows in the faces, which I just...
See, that's weird because I felt like I've read it before, and then the first time I read it, I was like, oh man, that's crazy. And then this time I'm kind of like not feeling the impact as much. I think that's interesting. Is it just like, oh, like you're getting a like mental idea about the tactile sensation of face puncture?
Yeah. I don't like that kind of thing. So,
so you felt bad for the goons?
Yeah, kind of, actually. I was trying not to, but I kind of did.
Okay, fair enough.
There,
and the big guy, the big bald guy with the mustache is kind of endearing. He's got a funny quality to him.
But actually, just turning back, like the first line that Guts says, which also kind of rattled me. On the second page, he says, "The only one trapped is you, bitch."
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Maximum
wow, he's
edge.
not playing.
Yeah. Right. So he goes in here. You also get the first scene of him like slicing somebody totally in half.
Yeah, and that doesn't bother me as much as the arrows
Doesn't
through
make
the
any
faces.
sense. That doesn't make no sense.
I mean, it's just not as, I don't know.
The torso's not sensitive area, really.
You know, then you're dead. Whatever. You're dead. Like, immediately.
I'm sure people are like alive for half a minute.
Who knows?
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't want to find out. But yeah, this scene, you know, in particular, I guess is pretty important because it's the introduction of Puck. And I had to stop. I had to stop for a good few minutes to look at Puck and figure out what I was looking at.
Yeah, because it's the second like fantasy drop. You know, you've seen the monster chick, and so you're like, okay, this is a fantasy story. But then like now it's a little more like fantasy, like a little more high fantasy, and not like horror monster, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, Puck is just this really strange prepubescent, like sexless creature, and I couldn't figure out like, okay, no chest, so must be like a little a boy. But wait,
There's
nothing
not
in
even
the genitals.
no like little mini nub or nothing. Yeah.
Nothing in the genitals. So wait, must be a girl.
Yeah.
And so I still am not sure what Puck's pronouns are. But you know, I guess for those of us in a certain generation, I immediately thought of
Gen
No,
X.
I'm not a boomer, and
Listen,
I'm not Gen X.
You're immediately
I am an older millennial.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm Gen
you're
X.
Gen X.
That's
though.
right.
Yeah.
Get 'em. Okay.
I immediately thought of Puck from the real world.
Yo, the real world Puck, right?
Yeah, and we had actually discussed, like, did he get his name from Berserk? And I tried to find it.
We're going to throw some pictures up here because, like, it's really funny that you brought that up because I haven't thought about that in forever. But that guy was, like, he was sort of, like, faking, he was sort of, like, fake grunge punk, like, in between. I don't know, it was he had a really weird take that was, like, sort of like a quasi, like, freewheeling individual. But you looked into it.
I did. I was really curious where he came up with that nickname, and he said something like, "Oh, like it was about sounding tough and hardcore." Like
you get hit with a hockey puck, it's gonna hurt. Right.
So it had nothing to do with Berserk, and then I remembered Midsummer Night's Dream has a Puck. And I thought it had something to do with fairies. I'm not familiar with that. I mean,
clearly in Berserk that he's pulling from, Miura's pulling from Midsummer Night's Dream is a...
Yeah. When I looked up Midsummer Night's Dream, you know, it's Puck is characterized as like this mischievous fairy figure, and they think that might be drawing from Celtic mythology, and the puka, which is like again a mischievous like fairy figure, but also can be somewhat sinister as well. And that is actually, there's a Puck in the Sandman who is much more sinister than the Puck.
So that's interesting too, because you know, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, they are like their influence is this guy named George MacDonald, and so he has a book called Lilith, and the other one is called Phantastes. Get that again, Phantastes. Okay, so like, and it is like I think that it was somewhere in the 1800s, like early 1800s, that he wrote these, and these are like fantasy, like psychodream, like fantasy fiction. So like the way Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings like sort of follow a more like general strict narrative, this is just like a fever pitch dream, and there's a lot of fairies in that, and elves that are like mischievous. They're like fucking with animals, biting animals, and pulling their hair and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of that similar aspect. Yeah, check out George MacDonald. That stuff is insane. It's actually difficult to read because it's such an old writing style, but it's the precursor to like modern high fantasy fiction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Puck definitely struck me immediately, and perhaps that's what he, she, they is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Are we going to establish that Puck has he, him pronouns?
I would consider like my impression of Puck with no breasts and having shorter hair is prepubescent male.
Okay.
That's my take on it. I mean, like we'll see as the series goes on if it confirms that or not.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah. So Puck was my MVP for this chapter. I really felt like there's this style of humor that really appeals to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in like direct contrast to Guts and the way Guts carries himself in this world. And in addition to that, like, I felt like with Puck kind of huddling and like shivering at like these scenes of extreme violence, like that, oh, I'm feeling the same way. So, to some extent, it felt like Puck was like a proxy to the audience.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. Yeah.
Yeah, and like he's like this voice of humanity. And there is actually, because I was looking it up, and there's actually a writing technique termed audience surrogate, which is exactly kind of what Puck is, and that like he's thinking the thoughts that you're probably thinking in terms of like
why are you so cruel, Guts? And
and this is a human being, like treat them properly, and there's this moral compass going on there.
He says like he shows up later to like rescue Guts, and he's like, it's my elfly duty to do this. Yeah, it's part of the elfin code.
Yeah.
Something, he feels like he has to repay the favor.
Right. Yeah. Like we elves are.
Because the Coke Castle barbarian bandit men have marinated him in a wine bottle, is what he said.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. And they decapitated his troop leader because he was in a traveling...
So I was going to ask you if you picked up on that. Yeah. So that's sort of a thing where it's like, is this going to pan out later? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm just I'll be interested as you read this to see what sticks with you. But yeah.
Yeah. So that also kind of directly ties back to A Midsummer's Night Dream in terms of he's part of a troupe of actors or actresses. I don't know, whatever.
Interesting. Okay. Traveling performers. So then it seems like Mira wants to get a torture scene in. So he just Guts just lets himself get captured or whatever. It's a really quick scene where it's just some men show up and he's like, oh shit. Because he, he's he's a wanted man, I guess, for fucking with these bandit ruffians that are protecting the castle.
Yeah. And
how do are you pro torture? Are you a torture aficionado, or does it bother you?
I go to class once a week to really hone my skills.
Get your cat o' nine tails level up. So, but I mean, did that fuck with you at all? Him getting beat up on?
Yeah, it felt pretty potent being the first, I guess, torture scene of this book, and certainly not the last. But I did what was interesting is I guess. So we get the first moral quandary of the book here, in terms of, because the mayor comes and visits him, and it is revealed that the mayor is delivering women and children to the apostle. Yeah,
and Guts keys in on that, because I think there's this one scene where you see this just wagon of children, and they make sure that I mean, it's Miura is making sure that you see that, and so it's funny how he like basically shows that the mayor guy is just covering CYA,
Yeah, and I mean, at first I felt very sympathetic to the mayor. Like, if you're in that position, do you deliver women and children to the apostle every week to keep your town from being razed to the ground? I think most of us are going to be like, surely not. Like, I would never do that. But when you're in a tough situation like that.
Well, I mean, everyone's like going to be fighting to not get killed,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. Like, is that gonna, like, in the longevity of the situation, is that gonna actually save people, or is it just another way to funnel the death in a different fashion?
Yeah, because like as the chapter goes on, it seems like maybe he's more self-interested than he portrayed himself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, would you be delivering women and children to somebody so they could be eaten if like it was going to save your life? Like, again, like you would say, no, of course not. But I mean,
to be fair, the mayor seems fucked up. The whole there's not a frame of him feeling good, anywhere in there. So
yeah, and it also made me wonder, because specifically it's women and children, like
mm-hmm.
the tradition, like traditionally women and children are the ones that are supposed to be protected.
Titanic lifeboats,
go on the boats, like get escorted out first to wherever, whatever disaster is happening. So it did make me wonder about like the psychology of the men in the town, like how they're feeling. And I wish we could have seen some of that. There was that scene in the pub where the guy's like, oh, I feel bad for that elf, but they were just like,
oh yeah, they're like, best to just stay out of it. Yeah, right.
But that's not really hitting so close to the home, like if it's their wife or their child.
Well, and that's like it's only a matter of time before they come for you situation, mm-hmm. As we see later. So then the mayor goes and interacts with the Lord, who is in the castle, who's taken over the castle. And so that kind of like sheds a little more light that's interesting because Guts and the Apostle Lord like are both like calling the mayor out for like, oh, you're just trying to save yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting like similarity between Guts and, it's just like, okay, they've seen more shit. The mayor is definitely like fodder.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like a narrative jobber for the for this like chapter. So introduces the Snake Lord Apostle person. I guess we're skipping ahead calling it Apostle, but that's okay. So what did you think about this guy? Would you go on a dinner date with him?
Only if he wore his snake armor.
Yeah, the snake armor is actually pretty cool. So it's a pretty grotesque scene.
That was my runner-up scene.
Oh, most impactful scene. Right.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that he flicks some of his dinner at the mayor, and it turns out to be an ear.
And so it's got to be a child's ear, right?
Or a woman.
Right. What's worse? What's better? I would, if I were you, I'd just not answer the question.
Yeah, I don't want to be canceled this early in the game.
Yeah, right.
We already touched on pronouns. Right. Forget it.
So they introduce him, and he's having a good time, right, at the mayor's expense and the town's expense. What do you think about his design?
His design? Like,
yeah, just like as a character, like, any thoughts, any comments on that?
I was appropriately intrigued, like, because, something's obviously not right about him.
Yeah, a little uncanny valley in the face.
Yeah.
And shark teeth, right?
Yeah, right. And like I said, I really enjoyed the snake armor and just like these little breadcrumbs of the story being revealed, mm-hmm. like in terms of, what's going on here.
Yeah, like what's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he flicks the ear and the mayor's like really freaking out, and it's kind of like you can't tell if it's like, is he freaking out because he is like worried about getting ear eaten himself, or like there's a little bit of realization of what he's been delivering to this guy, but he probably knew, but it's like not seeing it up close, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, right.
Deal. And so, so this is where, like we were talking about earlier, where Puck shows up and, helps Guts out. Guts has a little thing where he sees a freaky, like, fetus monster, right?
Yeah, disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Is it a life or... Okay, no, anyway.
Not a life, no.
Yeah.
Stomp on it.
So, that's what Guts is like, get the fuck away from me! So then Puck shows up and rescues him. And that's where we were saying he was like, oh, we elves have a strong sense of duty.
Oh, yeah. To repay a debt.
Yeah. So he's not a fairy, he's an elf. And then so what did you think about the healing poses? Like, that's some really prepubescent sexualization.
I just find that he's so adorable that I really don't find it sexual. I just think he's this, like, adorable, cute little thing. Like,
okay, fair enough. I mean, you don't think those poses are...
Yeah, what do you think of that?
I mean, I don't, like... I don't know what to think about. Those poses are, they're supposed to be somewhat... They're supposed to be provocating some kind of reaction from you. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you're of the more conservative mindset, that's going to pop you off. And if you're a more liberal mindset, you're going to be like, this is the month for this. So it just depends on you, on who you are, on your take of it. But I mean, I definitely saw that and was like, okay. I mean, because Miura's just got a good sense of figure structure, and so he can do different, types of... architecture for bodies. And
I feel like with that, like, introduction where I was trying to, like, figure out what Puck was, I slotted Puck in the category of sexless. So, like, I'm just not looking at this like
okay,
that.
fair enough. Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. There's another question of what happens when you sexualize an asexual character. So he heals him. Mm-hmm. And he asks him about he's like, cool tattoo, bro. What? Is that your family crest? He actually does say something like it.
Yeah. Looks like a crest or something.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts about this?
I wasn't really sure what to think of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, now reading the whole Black Swordsman arc, you know more about it. But like, was that something that stuck out to you, or were you just like, I don't know what's happening here?
Yeah, it stuck out to me. Obviously, they were calling attention to it, but I didn't know what to make of it. Mm-hmm. And at some point later on, the Apostle does see the brand and says something about him being a sacrifice and like, who is this person who has the brand?
Yeah, he's like, it absolutely fucks his day up. He's seeing it, The Apostle had said something to the mayor of like, I don't need a reason to just fuck everybody up. Like, my favorite thing is hearing bones breaking, crushing some skulls. And so then the next thing is like, okay, so I guess this is more ruffians, like they got killed in the bar, but they're like destroying the town basically. Mm-hmm. And then, so this is my favorite scene is, and I guess like the first time I read this, I didn't really download that this was happening, but the Apostle has a halberd with a fucking half torso of a child on the top of it, and he's drinking its blood, and it is like, it's like he's at a night out on the town or something. Like, he's having so much fun. Like, literally the onomatopoeia is wah ha 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 ha. So I just didn't connect that before, and I'm happy to be a sick fuck, but that was my favorite scene of this because it's just so.
I think we're gonna have to stop seeing each other.
That's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. It's worth it. I'm not gonna let you step in the way of trademark good art. Okay.
Okay.
So just remember that.
I see.
And so this is like the segue to Guts. Guts is 1v1 against Apostle, right? The first Apostle. I guess not the first. He does fuck the army up.
Yeah.
So is that the first horse decapitation scene?
I believe so.
Did that have any effect on you at all?
Well, it's funny because the day I read it, I had actually accidentally killed an NPC horse in Breath of the Wild, and I had saved like just 10 seconds before. So rather than allow for that
save scum
NPC horse to remain dead, I reloaded.
You're scum of the save world. But I mean, you do care about horses, so did you?
I do,
but you didn't care about this horse.
I was really more interested in the sword in that frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does some really sick stuff. Like there's like probably, if you counted them up, it's like beans in a jar. But there's like 3,000 lines going across the blade. You know. Okay, so he's killing a lot of these guys. I mean, he's using his like bolt action, rotatable hand crossbow. Anything about that? Are you like whatever?
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. It's sort of like
that.
Leonardo da Vinci contraption.
Yeah.
Battle.
I really like the frames where he's grabbing the arrows in his hand to like cue up.
Oh yeah, he's getting like multiple ones. Yeah.
Because I love bow and arrows, and I just love any sort of archery.
It's sad that you don't like the face stabbing though. That's sort of sort of a ruined orgasm.
Only stab like maybe torso and only.
Or have mercy and cut him in half.
Neck down.
Yeah, okay.
Shooting. Okay.
All right, and so now he's gonna 1v1 the Apostle. So what'd you think about this fight? Because this is kind of more of a reveal, right? Like he starts off like just in snake armor, and Guts just absolutely like 360 no scope headshots him over and over again. And they're kind of like starting to fuck around with whether like the face is actually the face or not, because they're like putting life into the eyes of the helmet. And then he does the age-old trick of he knocks him like into a dark hole, which is like used in some other prominent like scenes from some power fantasy anime I've seen. And, it's a good way to like disguise what's about to happen. And then the tail flips out and hits Guts. So what did you think about that? And then the face reveal for the Apostle.
I thought the whole snake form aspect was really cool.
Okay, so you're down for monsters.
I am, just not monsters
coitus.
Getting people unawares while they're having sex.
What's wrong with monster coitus?
I just don't want to die.
We'll definitely have to, when we do the book club of Dark Tower, you have to jump in to that. Okay, yeah.
I'm worried now that you're making it to monster sex.
Yeah, you should be.
I'm
you should be
disturbed.
You should be. There's not like, you have to savor those moments in fiction because they're not everywhere.
Okay.
And they shouldn't be. If there's too much of that, it's not good. So he shows off the face, and like I just have to say that this face is like really messing with human sexual anatomy, where the tongue is like phallic and the mouth is turned vertically so as to like be more vaginal, and I just think that's like
there's folds there.
Yeah, there's folds there. Yeah, they are. Yeah, that's right.
I can't believe I just said that.
Do you think that I'm proud of you?
This influence
I'm proud
of yours.
Yeah, that you're gonna go there. Do you feel like that form is painful for the Apostle? Like to change your body physically that much, it seems like there'd have to be some level of pain. Like maybe magic like changes what that is, or like demon curse magic, or whatever you want to call this, the incantations happening here.
I don't think so, but it could very well be, since he was in the body of a human being, but it doesn't seem like the human body is so important for them to be anchored in the world. It's more just for them to pass, as human beings.
Yeah. I'd be really interested to see what his story was of like how he became this way, given that the armor is like a living part of his body, but it also seems to be separate when he's like more human. So then you get the full monster body reveal stuff, you know, and everyone's flipping out. Like it's clear that the bandit idiot guards have never seen this like crazy thing. So he's just about to like, you know, he's showing his full hand and he's just gonna fuck everybody up. But I mean, he's got his eyes set on Guts. And so he beats the shit out of Guts. Basically, he beats him with the power of monster kind, right? Like a million snake tails, like all muscle. And so now you get to see what they didn't show in the first 2 pages of like what he actually does with his metal hand.
Yeah, because I didn't understand what was happening in the first 2 pages when I first looked at it. But yeah, this was an interesting reveal. I think it's a pretty cool mechanic. BFG?
Big fucking gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then it's sort of like, how badass are monsters if you can just like put a hand cannon to their face and blow them to bits? I don't know. It's sort of an interesting thing that like OPs the monster form. And then there's some, and then this is like sort of like some of the first like bad motherfucking double page spreads. And he does the good old cut him torso in half, you know.
Yeah.
Arm lopped off with that. So he gets him, and then so I guess the moral question here that's interesting is like how much Guts is reveling in the torture of the apostle. Like after the apostle's down, he's just like continuing to unload arrows into him.
Yeah, and to me, I actually really relished that because the apostle was taunting him and saying, "No human can best me," and you know,
like monster moral grandstanding, like
just like, "Oh, you puny thing, you're just food."
Yeah, he is saying that. He's like very focused on food.
Yeah, so I mean, just like I am.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
you. Yeah. Like if he had smartphones, he'd be like scrolling through Instagram clips of bubble tea and exclusive chocolate
cookies.
Yeah, cookies,
cake.
Yeah. So yeah, and then Puck is seeing this, right?
Yeah, and you know,
torture.
Puck is like absolutely shivering. You know, again, like I appreciated that a bit because you know, part of my brain was like, oh my goodness. This is very violent.
Yeah, it is. And also he like says like, oh, it must be crazy to be unkillable. So it's like, that's kind of an interesting idea. It's like, if you can't die, then that means you can be in infinite pain. Like you can be in a permanent state of pain, right? Like if you can't die and someone drops you in a volcano, you know, like that's going to be hell on earth, literally, for you. For eternity, you know. And then Guts just walks off. He's like, I'm done here. And I think there's some point in there where Puck is like, this is before, but Puck is like, you don't give a shit about like what happens to the people in the town. And he's like, no, it's just like, if they, like, it's their business. It has nothing to do, like, what I have to do here has nothing to do with like other people getting hurt or dying.
Yeah.
And so what is your thought on like chapter rating for this? Was this a chapter that you enjoyed? This is your first foray into this side of stupidity.
I did enjoy it. You know, it took me a bit of time to like settle into the fight scenes and just kind of, I read fantasy all the time, so fight scenes aren't really, I'm no stranger to fight scenes, but it is pretty different in a visual form.
Are you enjoying like reading and interpreting through art?
Yeah, I really am.
Do you think if it was like just literature, that it would be harder to like attach to it?
No. I mean, I guess I'm not sure. I don't really know.
I think it's interesting, like, once you start, like, looking at stuff that's, like, more purely visual or art-based, and then it's, like, sort of a question of, like, is description, like, too, like, is description, like, with words too curated?
Maybe. I tend to speed read a lot, so I skim.
But do you comprehend?
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I probably don't get the full picture because I read so fast that I'm just, like, skimming through it. And here, like, I had to take a lot of time to understand, like, what was going on in certain frames. And
I feel like it's a more personal download because it's, like, less of reading, like, a patent abstract of what is happening in the story. I wanted to just bring up, because we talked about the bow, and we talked about his mechanical arm, but, like, so what do you think about Guts' Buster Sword in general?
I hate them.
You hate Buster Swords in general?
Yeah.
Is Buster Sword just toxic masculinity?
I just think it's silly. They look silly, okay?
Is it the pickup truck of anime as far as, like, compensation?
Yeah, with, like, double-sized wheels or something, you know?
The booster wheels,
I guess the first time I saw a Buster Sword was Final Fantasy VII with Cloud, and that's the only Final Fantasy I ever played. I hated it with a passion.
Yeah, that's a
because of the random encounters on the world map, and it was like you would just move like an inch, random encounter, again, random encounter, like constant. And they were so boring.
That's how you level up. That's how you level up.
But it was autopilot. It wasn't fun. It wasn't challenging. It was just like...
My problem with that game is the story.
To the menu, scroll here, select this move here.
But if you were dying in those battles, then you'd be like, wait a second.
But I wasn't, so it was boring.
Yeah, because you're going against trash mobs.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. I guess, that was my first... introduction to grinding, you know?
Yeah.
I got to Sephiroth.
Oh, so you did go. Shit. You did go through some of it then. If
I
you
did.
Got there. Okay.
I got to him losing his shit and I guess burning everything down, and then I was like, okay, and I didn't finish it like I do with most games. So.
Well, anyway, FF12's got a better story, so I'll jump in with you having a non-popular take about a video game there. Okay. You're like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
I don't ever want to see a Final Fantasy again. I tried the MMO and that was also absolutely terrible.
We should do a watch party for the Spirits Within movie.
Have fun with that.
Okay.
You and Lawless.
Well, I said we.
You and Lawless. You're gonna
Okay.
Love it.
I actually don't want to sign on to that. So so you did enjoy the chapter. And the lore stuff for this chapter is more like getting you used to monsters, right? Yeah.
And like circling back to Sandman, because I was like, there's this really cool channel, like there's this guy, Danny Malt, and he pans through every single Sandman page. And so I was looking back to see what bothered me so much. And like part of it was I just hated the art. I hate the art. It's ugly.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I don't like it.
So what do you, how would you rate it in comparison to Berserk?
I realized, like going through Berserk, that I love the art. So nice. Like even like the grotesque parts in Berserk are some of the most beautiful. Yeah. Like in terms of like how they're shaded or there's charcoal. I mean, and you know, going
contrast,
like after going through the Sandman and like hating every second of it, I hate it even more right now because just like going and refreshing and being like, why did I have such a problem with this?
Right.
Like, and then coming to the first few pages of Berserk, like, and realizing like this is gorgeous despite how disturbed I am by what's going on here. I really love this art.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I always see a fan. So, like, I was interested to see what your take would be, not coming into it. And so, it's fun seeing you be won over. I want you to keep being resistant to it. And I want you to, because this is wholly and solely to see how resistant you can try to be against One Piece.
Well, I mean, he has a Buster Sword, so I mean, he loses off the bat.
You hate it, but that's how you get the beautiful gore scenes.
Okay.
So this story is it's fucking fantastic, and it's going to be really fun to see how you feel about Chapter 2, which we're going to do later. So this is it. We're done. Chapter 1. We finally got it done. We're finally getting
What
it
is this?
happening.
The third or fourth take?
This is a lot longer than we thought it was going to be, but I feel like
it was the wider range that I wanted it to be, touching
I
on like all different aspects.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can pull out of one chapter, but I think a lot of that's because you haven't fucked with this kind of thing before, you know.
I don't know.
All right, well, Chapter 2 next.
Sounds like fun.